cloud native, SD-WAN, analytics, machine learning, agile development and testing, edge computing, DevOps, service management, enterprise architecture, hybrid IT, neural networks, cybersecurity, serverless, low-code, no-code, big data, integration, Intellics, where we bridge modern and legacy technology and untangle the buzzwords to help business and IT leaders connect the dots to achieve digital transformation. Disclaimer: the perspectives expressed in this show are the independent opinions of the hosts and/or guests and do not necessarily reflect the position of Intellics or any companies mentioned here. And now, your hosts, Charles Arajo.
The entire purpose of a BI platform is to help harvest and harness data from throughout your organization and transform it into actionable insights that create business value and competitive advantage. But achieving this demands that you change the way you look at the entire process and how you leverage both your teams and your tools to build and streamline your data to insight pipeline. The question is, how do you do that? Okay, LSP, this is the big $64,000 question. Wait a minute. Do you even know what I mean by that, or am I dating myself?
You're talking about the retro "Who Wants to Be a Millionaire" question here, yeah?
Well, it was actually from way before that. In the 50s, there was a show called The $64,000 Question. And in fairness to myself, I'm not actually that old. I guess it was a thing that my dad used because he is. But anyway, all right. Well, so it's the big question. So yeah, I guess Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, the $1 million question now today. So here's the big question, no matter what it's worth. How do you build this new self-service data to insight pipeline? But actually, before you answer that, I want to take a step back. Why do we need a new process or approach in the first place?
I think the answer is very simple. Today, businesses, typically, if you look at sales, marketing, and finance, these departments are taking their decisions on the applications that they want to use. So it's no longer a central IT team that is managing what applications the business department should use. And with that, what happens is you need tools that augment your business process. For example, I could go with a CRM provider. However, I also need an analytics tool that helps me to understand that CRM data. Back in the days or back in the past, the model was you would build a homegrown CRM and it would have an analytics app layer built on top of it by the IT team. So now that is changing. And another reason you want to do it is typically reporting was all about what was happening in the past. It's a rear view mirror. So there are different types of analytics that everybody's aware of. You're looking at descriptive analytics, which is all about bare bones reporting that you want. Then you would get to predictive analytics, where you're looking at forecasting, if you have time series data, you're looking at trend line analysis and so on, and what if analysis. And then the third, the holy grail, as most people would call it, is the prescriptive analytics, where you're looking at trying to assess anomalies within the business data and then take decisions even before those issues happen. For example, in the context of, let's say, service level agreement violations and so on, you want to be prescribed about what can happen with the data before it actually happens. So it's all about getting this descriptive, prescriptive, and predictive insights within the data. And that's where the businesses are. You're no longer just looking at traditional reporting.
So to do all that, you're saying that we need to look at these pipelines and processes a little bit differently. Is that right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's about, it's no longer historical data all the time. It's all about sometimes near real time insights that you want to get to. So accessing information in near real time to get to the insights that you need.
So this goes back to my $64,000 million question, whatever it is. So how do you do that? What are the building blocks, or are there key building blocks that people need to be thinking about as they then go down this road?
Definitely, Charlie. There are things that you got to do. First of all, as a line of business or as a department within an organization, when you choose the application that you want to help with the process automation, you need to be looking at tools that give you access to data. Because just imagine what has happened is you went from on-premise software where you had access to the database, raw database, to plumb data and do whatever you wanted to do with the data for analysis. Today, when you go to a SaaS provider, they give you the application And unless they have an API layer, there is no way for you to get to the data. Yeah, you can do those exports that are manual, but that's not going to cut it. If you need insights in near real time, the tools need to have API access. Now, once you have selected the tool and assuming that it has all the APIs that you need to plumb the data that you need for analysis, the next step is the data preparation layer, making sure that you're able to set up the pipelines where the processes, once you bring in the data, you do the model transitioning, the model transformations, the enrichment, and so on. And before the data gets into the hands of the business user or the system that's going to process the data, what are the guardrails? Again, I talk about guardrails because this is a very critical part, because you need to make sure that you have access control layers at every level and you catalog the data before it gets to you. So you got to have a data management and data compliance in place so that you have a process and the process has governance as a part of it. And you also have the right tools, and all the tools should be in such a way that it gives you access to data and you can have that whole arc being covered there.
Okay, well, I don't mind admitting that my head is spinning a little bit with that. You threw a whole bunch at me, and I'm a little simple-minded here, so I do better with kind of simple, boiled down lists. So if you could tell me what are the key building blocks, the things that if I'm going to try to re-envision the way I approach data and analytics and BI, what are the things I should be most concerned about?
All right, let me do it for you, Charlie. The first one is strategies and objectives. The second one is the tools. The third one is models. The fourth one is processes and governance. These are the four building blocks for having a data to insight pipeline.
Oh my gosh, so helpful. Okay, great. That is perfect. Now let's go through them one at a time. So let's start with strategies and objectives. What do I need to be worried about or thinking about as I sort of go down that road?
The first thing from a strategy and objective perspective is what are the end goals? So while on one hand, you're looking at automating a certain part of your business, how important is that part, the process automation there, and how important is the data? Because you're at the end of the day using transactional systems. There is a system of record that is being used. So how important is this data point for the end-to-end 360-degree view of your business? So you need to understand what you want to do with that automation. What is that data going to help you with from an analysis and insights perspective?
Okay, I get that. That makes sense. And so the second one on the list, I actually found interesting, and I'm not sure if you were putting these in like priority order or not, but that you listed tools second. But I think I sort of understand a little bit why, based on what you just said about strategy and objectives and how they play in. So is that why tools is sort of the second pillar?
Absolutely, because the tools that you select are going to help you to meet your objective or not. For example, if I'm using a process automation tool and it doesn't have the data exposed via API, or it doesn't allow me to plumb data to my analytics layer, then what's the point, right? I mean, like there's no help. It's not going to help me to meet my objectives. So yeah, that's why I say tools are important, because as a part of that evaluation, you need to make sure that it is able to connect to your strategy and objective goals that you have set up as a part of step one.
And then what's the third one? You said models. So I know we've talked about models through this series quite a bit, but specifically when we think about this pipeline, what do I need to be worried about?
It's about having the ability to bring the data and also think of what are the other data points that you want to bring in to analyze the data. For example, we talked about this earlier, your CRM information from your e-commerce system, or your sales information from your CRM, from your e-commerce system. What's the impact of whether bringing data from, let's say, weather.com, or let's say you want to bring in demographics data and you want to create a model to understand how a certain brand of apparel is being consumed within the population demographics, right? So statistical information that you need and so on, and how do you combine this data and having the ability to create that model. I'm talking about the extensibility of the platforms so that you can create the models that you need to get to your objectives. Again, your business objective is 360-degree view of your business, and the 360 is contextual and it has a meaning, a different meaning for every different business. So if it's statistical data I need to bring in, you should be able to. If it's weather data I want to bring in, you should be able to. And you should be able to create extensions to the models and get to be able to get to the insights that you need.
And in other parts of this series that you talked a bit, that I have a feeling fits in here, about this idea of blending those models, or the different layers of the models, right? So that all fits in here as well?
Absolutely. When I talk about modeling, I'm talking about in the most general context, in the most general way, where it's about bringing and blending data from any data source. It could just be any data source, literally. As long as you think it has got some connection to your business data, you should be able to create that model for analysis.
Okay. And then the fourth pillar, process and governance. What do I need to be thinking about in that context?
It's about things around what are the processes that you would have from a workflow perspective. So who can access what parts of the data, be it the data preparation layer, who can prepare the data? And once the data is prepared, who can consume that data? That access control at each and every level, the workflows that you want to have from a process approval perspective, that part is important. And then governance is around, how sensitive are you to privacy? Are you an organization that's going to keep PII or personal identifiable information private? And if you want to have governance around all those kind of aspects, then having the tools to be able to help you to mark data as PII or mask data that should not be seen by the data analyst who's going to consume the data, and all those kind of things needs to be understood beforehand. And other tools should also help you with governance. So again, tools will come into play here because your process and governance are at the end of the day tied to the tools that you select.
I have this sense, and again, maybe this is me reading between the lines, but that part of the reason people don't go through it. I mean, so this is, again, I appreciate you breaking this down, these kind of four pillars, right? It helps. I think it really crystallizes everything. Mm-hmm. But I can see that each one of these is, a challenge, maybe with the exception of tools. It's easy to go buy a tool, right? But understanding what you really want to achieve with it, actually thinking through the models, and you've talked about elsewhere in this series about how that's the hard work of really understanding that and building. And then what you just described about process and governance of putting that due diligence in, of understanding, what are the controls you need. That's all the hard work. I mean, is that why you see that organizations, when they struggle, it's because they aren't doing these pieces of it?
It's the most difficult part of all the things that I talked about, processes and governance, right? And also, businesses are evolving on a daily basis. How do you react to how things are happening around you, right? So it has to be something that's flexible. At the same time, it cannot be, bent to the point of breaking every third month once you have the process in place or the governance, strictures in place. It just cannot be broken. It's all about reacting and how open and flexible are you to do this. Again, it's easier said than done. I mean, this is where billions of dollars are being spent.
So, well, first of all, I just want to, give myself a pat on the back. I just proved why this was a $64,000 or $1 million question, because there was a whole lot to unpack there in all of that. But I'm going to ask one more. But
for that, I need the $1 million check because I answered that question.
Oh, wow. I noticed you picked the higher number. You didn't go with the $64,000. No, I need the $1 million. Okay, fine. Fair enough. So I guess the last question here is somebody who is saying, okay, I'm taking to heart everything that you just shared with me, and I now want to go back into my organization and do something with this. How do I put it all together? I mean, where do I start?
The way I look at it, tools and processes are the sort of enablers for the other three. For example, your strategic objectives, strategies and goal objectives, your modeling capability, the governance capability, everything is essentially connected to the capability of the tools and the processes that you're going to define. So these two are the most important aspects. These I would even call the starting points for this entire process. Process connects everything, be it, the business workflows, the governance that you want to have, and how exactly and how effectively can you use the tool for your governance requirements and so on is defined by processes. And tools, obviously, it's about bringing the data together. It's about understanding what capabilities the tools have. Does it have the extensibility that you need, and so on? So I would actually start at tools and processes to begin with.
We hope the series has helped you get a grasp of what a self-service BI future can look like and how you can begin moving your organization in that direction. I know that both LSP and I are excited to see what you will do with this information. LSP, thanks for joining me for this insightful conversation. I know I learned a lot, and I'm sure everyone watching did as well. On behalf of LSP and myself, thank you for joining us.